During the SAT test, you may be given a quadratic formula and asked to solve for it, for the solution that satisfies it. And the way it looks is a certain coefficient times x squared plus another coefficient times x plus some number equals to 0. Thankfully, there is a mathematical approach that makes this kind of solution not easy, but manageable. The hardest part, of course, it is to remember the formula itself. The good part is that once you do remember and get enough practice of applying this formula, you can get to solutions with quite reliable results. So let's take a look at this formula. It states that the second coefficient, the one applied to x in the negative form minus b, plus minus square root of the same second coefficient squared minus 4 times the first coefficient applied to x squared, in this case a, times c, the constant, that number, over 2 times a, the first coefficient. I have to admit that this formula, the solution, is quite heavy. And it is probably the heaviest formula you'll have to remember if you want to be ready for this kind of questions. So to apply it, let's take a look at a certain quadratic equation. 7x squared plus 8x plus 1 equals 0. So notice the covers. I just want you to connect it to the shape of the more lettered version that I offered earlier. And hopefully you can recognize it by seeing that there is a coefficient applied to x squared, in this case 7, and then there is second coefficient 8 applied to x, and then there is a constant or a number 1, and that all equals to 0. Let's assume that we're stubborn enough to remember this formula and bring it with us into the test room. So facing this quadratic equation, let's go and solve for it. So our x would equal minus 8 plus minus square root 8 squared minus 4 times 7 times 1 divided by 2 times 7. Please relate to the formula on the left where it says that minus b, in our case that is minus 8, plus minus square root b squared, and in our case, instead of b, we use number 8. Minus 4ac, a is number 7, the first coefficient. C is the constant, times 1. And then 2 is multiplied by a. And in our case, a is the first coefficient, number 7. If we go to the next step, we have minus 8 plus minus square root of 64 minus 4 times 7 times 1 is 28. So it is 64 minus 28. Everything is divided by 2 times 7, 14. And at the next stage, we have minus 8 plus minus square root of 36 divided by 14. Since we have this whole plus minus situation, it means we will have two answers, assuming that whatever we get under the radical is some positive number. So our first answer would be x1. We will add square root of 36, and square root of 36 is 6. So it is minus 8 plus 6 divided by 14. And that equals minus 2 divided by 14. And since we want to simplify, let's divide both sides by 2. And we will get minus 1 over 7. And our second solution would be minus 8. In this case, we'll subtract square root of 36, which is 6. And we get minus 14 divided by 14. And that equals minus 1. So x1, the first solution, is minus 1 over 7. And x2, the second solution, is minus 1.